I have a great idea for a novel, but I have no idea where to start. Hi, I'm Beth Anne Campbell. I share my life as an author and podcaster, bare bones, blunt, and no BS. So I've written about 7 books fully or mostly, and each time I start a new one, I plan it a little bit better and in a little bit more detail. Why do I do this? Oh my God, because it helps me so much to save time later. It is a lifesaver. The more I plan, the easier my writing goes. So I think everybody should at least consider sitting down and spending some time planning. Now, everybody's different. Everybody has different preferences, different ways you like to plan, different tools that you like to use. I use a spreadsheet. Look, I'm Gen X, so, don't judge. That's just what I come from tech, so I'm just spreadsheet oriented. So I'm going to break down these elements in a little bit more detail in later videos, but here's my high-level spreadsheet plan for starting a new book. So these are the tabs that I have in my spreadsheet, my planning spreadsheet. Number 1, I have a title brainstorm. So I spend a little bit of time brainstorming a title. I might already have something in my mind. It's probably not going to be the final title, but I like to have a good working title because it's inspirational and it helps me just kind of look at this as a real effort, a real project. Number 2 is I have a plot brainstorm. So I want to get out of my head all of the things that I want to remember that I want to include in this book. So it's really just a brainstorm. There's sometimes there's no method in the madness. It's just word vomiting, but I like to get it all out. So again, I can clear my brain for other stuff. 3, I have a style guide. So generally I will use the Chicago Manual of Style for my writing, more or less, but this is a little bit more specific to each book. So it will include things like chapter fonts and size and spacing. And in my current writing, I'm doing paranormal mysteries, and intertwined in some of the chapters, there are excerpts from a podcast that the 2 of the characters run. So I use a different font for that, and I bold some of it and I italicize. I want to include all of that so I don't have to remember when I'm 10 chapters in and I'm scrolling back up, what did I use for the font? I can just refer to my style guide. Number 4, I have a location, kind of a map or a general idea of where does this take place? Where is the story taking place? And it might be multiple locations depending on your book. So what state, what city? Is it real? Is it fictional? Give me a little bit about what it's like so that I don't have to think about these things when I'm wondering if I'm remaining consistent. I'll also have a tab for structure logistics. So again, paranormal mystery is all about an investigation, a ghost hunt, where the team spends a lot of time in a room with camera setups. And so it has to be, pretty exact. I can't in one scene refer to a couch over here and then in another scene it's across the room. I want to be consistent. So sometimes I use photos for inspiration, and sometimes I do like blueprint diagrams that I'll make up in Canva. Number 6, I have a timeline. So I want to keep track of what happens when key events, because I don't want to have to worry if I say in a chapter 5 days ago something happened and then I forget and really it's only 3 days ago. Somebody's going to catch that and it's going to be embarrassing. Number 7, so now we're getting to the meat of the plan. Number 7 is characters. Character development before you start writing is super, super important. It's critical for me. I get into a great deal of detail because I do not want to have to be changing things or remembering things halfway through my book. So I settle on a name for each character. I have the relationship between each other and in the general plot arena. Their age, their physical description, their personality, their background, their clothing, what types of clothing do they wear, their occupation. I'll pull photos from Pinterest on what they might look like and what they might wear, so I don't have to think about it later. Number 8, I have a chapter template. So this is a very high level, and because I'm currently writing a series, this is super important. But generally, I always have a chapter tab that is sort of the high level. What are the chapters that I'm planning on including in the book? And in generally what order? What's the summary of what happens in that chapter? Who might get introduced? And maybe what is going to carry us into the next chapter? What is going to carry the reader into the next chapter? And maybe a few more pieces of info. But it's pretty high level. And by the way, all of this stuff, when you plan, there's nothing that gets carved in stone. This is like the idea of when you have a structure in place, it makes it easier to stray from that structure. And that's really what we're talking about here. You don't have to remember the stuff, you get it out of your head. But then if you need to change it, it's pretty easy to do so. And you can do that anytime. I do it all the time. So number 8, chapter template, high level chapter and summary. Number 9, this is my detailed chapter breakdown. So this is just how I work, right? I have a spreadsheet tab. I have a column for each chapter. I'm pulling that in from the chapter template. And just before I start writing that chapter, I run it like a movie in my head, and I just brainstorm line by line what's happening in that chapter. And again, I often will stray, I will change things around, I might take something out, I might add something, but generally I know step by step, running it through my head like a movie, what's happening in that chapter. So when I get ready to write, it's all there. It's like a bullet list of all the things that are happening in here, and I don't have to try to remember what was I going to do here, right? So again, just before I start a chapter, boom, I do the breakdown, I write the chapter, and then I start the next one. And why don't I do it all ahead of time? I don't know, because sometimes as I'm writing, things change and they could significantly change, or sometimes I'm not really sure what chapter I'm going to include something in. So that's just how I work. Number 10, I always have a word count tracking tab. This is really optional because, you can just look down at wherever you're writing and it'll probably tell you what your word count is. But I like to do it. I like to track by session how many words I get in, because I do have goals. And then I might have additional tabs in my plan. Things like when I get done with my first draft, I usually add an editing tab. And this is just reminders for me of things that maybe it's something I'm seeing in my writing that I'm doing consistently and I don't like it and I want to go back and make sure I got it. Maybe I referred to a place or used a word and I corrected it, but I want to make sure that it's corrected everywhere. I use a lot of filler words like really or so, and I have to be careful about that. So I need to go back and look at those adverbs that end in ly. I use those a lot and sometimes overuse them. So I have kind of my Beth Anne Campbell list of things that I need to go back. So, and there could be other tabs that you need for depending on what you're writing. So all of this is for the end goal of when I sit down to actually write my draft. I want minimal unknowns, minimal questions in my mind, because as I write, there will always be unknowns and follow-ups and research that I need to do and better words that I need to find and etc. But when I write that first draft, I generally don't do any of that unless it is necessary to drive the story forward. So I highlight, I'll make a note. You're always going to find things, but this is really just to make it easy on you so that there are less things that you have to go back and change, so that you know that when you do need to change something, it's important. So I spend a good deal of time planning, but it makes the writing process so much easier. So if you have a great idea for a novel and you're like most people, you probably need to do some planning up front, and that planning could be hours, it could be days, it could be weeks, but trust me, it will be well worth it. All right, so let me know your planning process in the comments and what tools you use for your planning. And meanwhile, happy writing.